Hi, this is Kim Cook from Bread of Life Mission, and we are doing Conversations on a Bench. I've been sitting here on the bench having conversations about homelessness, mental illness, and addiction, and the crisis that we have here in Seattle and across the nation. I've had great conversations since 1 p.m. yesterday. I've got an hour and a half left, and I can go home to my warm bed. I am so excited, and in no way am I saying that I'm anything like the people that we serve. This is just a stunt to get some some discussion going. I have a bed to go to, they don't. And so I'm just blessed to be able to do that. So I have a new guest here on the bench, and it's James Lovell.
Yep.
Sorry.
No
It's getting...
Not the astronaut, James Lovell. I had to clarify this. I am not the 96-year-old national hero who flew Apollo 13.
Good to know. I won't ask you any questions about the moon.
Just those are off limits because I can't. Then Houston, we would have a problem.
Yeah.
There, you've heard James Lovell say it.
How many times have you said that?
It's canned at this point. Yeah, you can tell when I'm hamming it up a little bit, huh, Kim?
So, James, you are the interim co-CEO
That's right.
at Chief Seattle Club.
That's right.
And we just met.
We did.
I am ashamed to say that I've been here a year and a half and haven't gotten up to see you guys.
Oh, it's all good.
So,
as you probably know, working in homelessness is a fairly busy job, and it's not like we all have unlimited time. We're trying to make as much good as we can, and do as much good as we can.
Tell me about and your co-CEO with.
Yep, Pam Vaughn, who's an incredible person. She's been at the club much longer than I have. I've been at the club for just about 4 years. Pam's been there for, I think, almost 10 years. Pam is typically our chief administrative officer, so we're big enough now that we've got officers overseeing multiple departments. Typically, I oversee our building buildings and acquiring buildings, and then also the fundraising and grant writing side of things.
Oh, okay.
So
All the fun stuff. Yeah. So tell me about Chief Seattle Club and what you guys do.
Yeah, well, and also, by the way, we typically in our community, we usually share where we're from, right? So I'm James. I'm enrolled in the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians from Belcourt, North Dakota, but I was born and raised here, and that's actually a fairly common story, and it's kind of where it's the kind of genesis, right, of Chief Seattle Club. In the 1950s, there was an effort by the federal government, federal policy, to get Native people off reservations and into urban centers. And so the federal government lowered resources on the reservations and made all these promises about what would be out there in the cities. And, come to Seattle, come to Denver, come to LA, come to Chicago, come to Minneapolis, come to Phoenix. We'll have housing, we'll have education, we'll have social programs. And so all these Native people were, effectively, with the lowering of resources on the reservation, forced into urban living.
That sounds like a repeating problem.
Yeah, and this is on the heels of several hundred years of fairly outright genocide and other efforts to remove people from their land and put them sometimes hundreds of miles, sometimes thousands of miles from where they traditionally would have been. At the same time, the federal government made an effort to get rid of several tribes. So there's lots of tribes that lost their federal recognition at that time. And if you're a small tribe, or you're a tribe of any size, out in some rural part of Oregon, say, and you lose your federal recognition, you lose your Indian Health Service, you lose your Indian housing programs, you lose all of your tribal government support, which was already a struggling, kind of barely making it in a lot of these environments because of systemic reasons. So you had several major federal policies in the 50s that meant there was this boom of Native people who aren't from Seattle, whose tribes are not from the Seattle area, coming to Seattle in the 50s. In the 1960s is when the American Indian Women's Service League was founded, and it was Native women who came together and said, most of us aren't from here, but we got a lot of our people out here, and we need to do something about it. And so that's kind of our grandmother organization. It is from them that the Seattle Indian Health Board was birthed. It is from them that United Indians of All Tribe Foundation, which is Daybreak Star up in Magnolia, was birthed. And it's from them that Chief Seattle Club was birthed. It's not a coincidence that Chief Seattle Club, United Indians, and Seattle Indian Health Board were all founded in 1970. It's because it was this 10 to 15 year period of mass urbanization and Indian Relocation Act and the termination era where they were terminating federal recognition for tribes that brought all these Native people to the cities. Now, some Native people we're able to make it in different settings. Some were able to thrive. Most were struggling and are still struggling because of the systemic pressures and injustices that they carried with them. And for a shockingly large number of Native people, homelessness was what happened. And so since 1970, we have known that there is a crisis in Indian country with Native homelessness, urban Indian homelessness. And so that's when Chief Seattle Club was founded, with the goal of solving or of ameliorating that, right? It wasn't even, we knew it couldn't be solved just outright. So when you look at whom Chief Seattle Club serves, the vast majority are not from local tribes. Our local tribal partners do a lot of support for Chief Seattle Club. There's grant money, there's partnerships, there's they support us at our events. They support when they have tribal members that are with us. They offer supports in every way they can. But these tribes also have a duty to serve their people on their reservations, Tulalip and Muckleshoot and Snoqualmie and Suquamish across the water. And we rely on them to take care of their people, and that is their charge, and that's what they have an honor to do that. Our relationship with local tribes is we try to support them any way we can. We honor the land that we're on as their land, but our members are not from local tribes. They're from Southeast Alaska. That's actually our highest rate, is folks from Southeast Alaska, our highest percentage. After that, it's folks from Browning, Montana, Blackfeet folks. We've got folks from my reservation, which is 1,500 miles away in North Dakota, just south of Canada. There's more people from my tribe out here than getting services in all of the social service areas than there are local tribal members in a lot of these systems. And so we are grateful that our local tribes are doing everything they can to take care of their people, but there's still an unmet need. And because we're not recognized as like a federal entity. We're a nonprofit organization doing this work. We rely on we have private donations and of course lots of public funding now. So for the first 50 years of Chief Seattle Club, we had a series of different locations that operated as a day center. Get in from the cold during the day, showers, hygiene, 2 hot meals. We were the mailing address for for thousands of Native people who were living on the streets over the years. And then in 2019, we opened our first tiny house village. It was actually a different kind of structure, but it operates like a tiny house village. Folks have their own private room as they stabilize, and we find them housing elsewhere. And we were finding housing with other providers. One of the realities for Native people is that we really are a fairly small part of the overall population, 1% to 2% of King County, more or less. And so when you go into a building that has non-Native people in it as the dominant thing, it can be very isolating feeling. And like I said, we're on the heels of hundreds of years where all of our land and food cultures were taken away from us. Our children were taken away from us, put into residential schools and boarding schools. Our languages were illegal. You could be arrested if you were practicing your traditional cultural ceremonies, or spirituality was illegal. The 1978, they had to pass the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act because our religious freedoms were not available to us until that time. And there are many of our practices that are still restricted. And so you shouldn't need something that makes religion or spiritual practices available. It shouldn't take a federal act to restore something, right?
Right.
So you think of all these dimensions of identity that were stripped away by legislation, mostly federal.
Yeah.
And you say, is it really a shock that Native people are feeling alone and isolated when they're in non-Native spaces?
Yeah.
One example that I like to cite, I try to readily acknowledge, I carry more of my dad's presentation than my mom's. My dad's a white guy. My mom's the one who's Ojibwe. She's Native. And when she would pick us up from elementary school, my sister and I, these kind of lily white, red-headed kids, she'd pick up. These other moms there, mostly white, would, oh, are you their nanny? Are you their caretaker? And my mom, she's a big woman. You'd see her shoulders rise up. Is this tension of someone taking her children away from her? Of that, like, no, these are my babies. She's got the scars to show these were my babies. And it wasn't until, you could see her driving, almost white knuckling sometimes, driving home, get inside, she'd close the door. And it was then that you'd see those big shoulders start to come down a little bit, because that's her house. No one's going to take her kids from her in her house. And she has a lot of strengths and assets. And while she spent some time unsheltered, it was mostly she's had places to live. That's not what everyone has, though. Right. And so for Native people, this is a constant thing of the stripping of identity, the kind of, commodification of the genocide into something that can be shown in a cheap Peter Pan cartoon of the Red Man and all this kind of stuff, all the bad representations. So our folks weren't staying in other housing, even when they could get it. And we know there's a desperate shortage of housing available. So Chief Seattle Club, our previous leadership said, and our current executive director worked together, and they said, this stops now. Current CEO, Derek Bellegarde, was himself, he's shared openly about this, and we have permission to share. He lived on the streets. He was chronically homeless, and he had his mental health and substance use challenges that he's been in recovery from for years, 15 years now, I think. But these are real things for Native people to look at, is that when Native people don't feel any sense of identity, because it's already been legally stripped from us. We're a legislative race, right? So Chief Seattle Club, had a lot of good support to do it, but we came and we said, we're going to house our people. So we built our first building over in Pioneer Square. It's here in Pioneer Square, just south of the Smith Towers, 2 buildings south of the Smith Towers, called All. And it's the name is really a recognition that we're on Coast Salish land, and so that's a Lushootseed word that means home. It's 80 units there. Right away, and let me tell you, this kind of like, you talk about like a origin story. Our leadership went to one of the public funders and said, hey, we want to do this thing. And we were a small organization, 10 employees, trying to serve 1,800, 2,000 members a year in our day center, right? And so they just like basically literally laughed at them when they said, we want to build our own building. Because it was just so absurd that this tiny little organization of just a few Native folks trying to come together, most of whom had lived on the street themselves. And that was, in some ways, the best mistake they could have made, because nothing riles people up like being condescended to and laughed at. Yeah. So we opened our first building, and those same public funders immediately, have had our backs the whole way. So there's the city of Seattle, the county, the state of Washington. And different iterations of the federal housing supports have come through as well, including low-income housing tax credits. But we've now got 4 buildings. They're all permanent supportive housing, 24/7 staffing. It's all for folks who are formerly chronically homeless. And we've got 2 tiny house villages, one up in Ballard and then one down in Rainier Valley that's getting redeveloped right now. We've got our day center still in operation. We just received funding at the end of last year to open our 5th permanent supportive housing building. It's a new construction over right on the very edge of Yesler Terrace. Mm-hmm. 10, 12 years ago, we've got 10 employees and a day center. Now we've got 170 or so employees. We've got 5 buildings. We've got 2 tiny house villages. We still have this, our day center is still the beating heart of Chief Seattle Club, and that's where we have it's where we try to draw folks in. Because our goal is not to give everyone everything. It's not to give everyone every single, we don't provide meals in the units, and we don't do all those, because we are trying to get folks to come engage with other Native people, come be a part of the community. And those identity things that were stripped away, we can start to restore. Yeah. Our housing and our shelter can warm folks, can feed folks. In our day center, they can get meals. We can help clothe folks. We can do all these wonderful things that treat some symptoms, but don't treat what is it. So the thing that will actually, we believe, get our people furthest with their healing is restoring those identity pieces that were stripped by the federal government and local governments. Right? Seattle, it was illegal to live in town for 2 years in the 1860s if you were Native. If you had more than 3 Native people in a canoe together, it was considered a raiding party, and it was attacked. Right? So, all these policies, it's not just the feds. It's really at every level that there are injustices. Wow. So we're a homelessness organization. We're also we're a policy organization, because everything we do is responding to federal policies. Yeah. We are more than anything a sacred space, and that is in our mission, is a sacred space for Native people to come and be a part of restore, be around other Native people. That alone is a part of the restoration and the healing. But then we bring in traditional cultural work from all sorts of different regions and tribes and cultures. And those are the things that work on these underlying causes that had folks, when they were on the street, when this lack of housing forced so many folks onto the street, the lack of supports, and the coping that folks had to do often took the form of substance use. And the traumas of the residential system, of the stripping of identity, of the assaults, of the lack of legal rights for Native people, those traumas are going to be slow to overcome when folks are still on the street. So
Yeah.
we get them off the street first. It's not exactly housing first because we don't immediately put folks. Our hope is there are some folks who we get right away into an apartment, but our model is really you come to our day center, and then we want to get someone in a temporary shelter, a transitional site, because it gives us a chance to kind of assess, evaluate, help them stabilize a little bit.
Right.
Because once you get into a building, you have to sign a lease, and there are tenants and landlords involved, and it can be a pretty you can get a little bit of whiplash. And there can be this draw to isolation, and we don't see that as much when we've had a chance for folks to go into temporary shelter.
Wow. I learned so much.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when you were talking about your mom, the thing that stuck out to me is generational trauma.
Yeah.
Do you believe in that?
Oh, it's absolutely, it's core to everything we do that we try to heal. And for us, sadly, we were the first people to have generational trauma in the country, and obviously we know a lot of our other community partners and our Black folks and Latinx folks and Asian Americans. Really, every group has had some level of trauma that our federal government has put on them. So it started with us in 1492, and we are still carrying all of those generations in sometimes even in people's DNA.
Yeah.
But
Exactly
we see it.
that.
We see
That's
multiple
what I mean.
generations getting into foster care with nowhere to go when they age out, and so they immediately hit the street. And that's one of these ongoing sources of chronic homelessness for Native people is the foster care system, the prison system, and those who are in those systems are very likely to have had a parent or both parents in those systems as well.
Yeah. I want to say I'm not American, I'm Canadian, but they're no better.
I go up to ceremony
And-
in Canada actually because my reservation's just south. We go up to the reserves up there in Manitoba for ceremony, and it's just
I'm
very similar.
originally from New Brunswick,
Oh, okay.
and then I lived in upstate New York. So lots of.
Yeah.
I grew up in a village called Apahakwa. which
Okay, hey,
means
that's
where
yeah.
two rivers meet, and and they were every bit as bad as the United States. But I just want to say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
You can hear the Canuck when you say sorry.
Sorry.
I love it. Keep it going.
Sorry.
You should put a little bit of spice on it there. I
It's not on
love
purpose
it.
at all.
Love it.
It's just inbred in me. It's my generational.
Moro. A boot. Love it. No, yeah.
When I a couple of years ago went to D.C. and I did most of the museums.
Yeah.
The Native American Museum just broke my heart.
Yeah.
And,
it's a
I
beautiful
can't
building that carries a lot of violence and recovery, I think, potential within it. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't okay.
Yeah.
So, what? I don't even know what to ask you because you're kind of like all the things we talk about, but like you're kind of in your own lane there.
It is, yeah, and I think that's one of the things that it's systemically we've been forced into this very small box, and it's a really challenging situation to have to fight against 500 years of legislation, and we do operate differently than many other providers do because of that, the unique relationship we have with the federal government and other governments, and so we rely on lots of allies in the work because there are not multiple Native permanent supportive housing providers in town. So we have to rely on the other permanent supportive housing providers. We have our community partners from other Native organizations, but they don't do PSH. So it takes a little bit of a different, we have to really cultivate support wherever we can, and we're fortunate to have it.
Well, if there's something that we can do ever to collaborate,
Yeah.
I'm all over it. So
Well,
you
let's
just
make
let
it
me
let's
know.
make it less than once a year for
Yeah.
24 hours, and
Yeah,
I'm
let's
catching
do
you on
that.
23 and a half or something,
we're doing
right?
this again in October.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm 1 hour away.
Okay.
Woo! And I
Yeah.
haven't fallen asleep on anybody yet. Forgotten a few questions.
That's
but,
okay. Yeah.
We're going to do this again in October because this is kind of a pilot. There were 15 missions that did this in the same 24-hour period. And in October, we're hoping to have many, many more missions doing it. We're part of City Gate Network that is all gospel rescue mission kind of nonprofits.
Yeah.
And so, we'd love to do something more then, and I'll do the other 24 hours. And
Well, hopefully by then, our typical CEO, Derek, will be able to come and sit and talk with you for a bit. And you'll get better than the subs. But
Yeah.
he's a really dynamic speaker.
Yeah, well, I will look forward to meeting him,
Yeah.
and let's get together. We're 2 blocks away. Let's
I
have
know.
lunch sometime.
Yeah. Anytime.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for coming down, and this was great. It was so informative for me, and
Thank you.
I'm sure for many of the people that are watching. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.